Hello, Space Junkies, and welcome to What a Piece of Junk, the Star Wars podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. I am your host, Scott Baltman, and joining me for a very animated episode of our podcast, it's my original podcast co-pilot, Mr. Derek Marsh. Derek, how's it going, man?
Pretty good, pretty good. How's it going, Scott? It feels like it's been a while, which it has.
It has, yes.
Not that we haven't been talking almost on a daily basis anyways, but
Yeah.
how it goes. Getting great to actually have some Star Wars content. We apologize to the space junkies. It's taken us a couple of weeks. Just life happens, and it's a lot to consume of. I mean, essentially put these 9 episodes together, it's almost like a 3-hour movie. So
Yeah. Even though a few of them are only like 15 minutes long or 10 minutes long or something around those minute marks, like when you've got 9 of them, that's a pretty hefty chunk of animation. And some of it I felt was really worth my time. And some of it I felt I probably wouldn't be watching this all the way through if I didn't have a podcast to do about it.
Luckily, it's only 15 minutes long.
Yeah, exactly.
But of course, a movie.
we're like, go take a quick popcorn break. Anyway, but we won't be able to analyze these episodes of Star Wars Visions Series 3. I just did the thing that this guy just did. It's our very own Gooey Chewy, the man of 1,000 nicknames, Mr. Miracle himself, Dave Filclone, Nathan Miracle. Nathan, you colored my brain for my reactions. Instead of season 3, I said series 3 because you've been watching a lot of BBC stuff.
Yeah, well, Channel 4, British stuff, regardless of which British station. So it is seasons, not series here in the United States, but we will forgive you since I was the one who implanted that idea in your brain.
It's interesting because Disney Plus is international. So I was thinking they might use the phrase series. They were have been for a little while, the exclusive home of Doctor Who. So you would think that they would at least adopt the terminology there, but no such luck with Star Wars Vision.
Our homework before next time is to get a VPN, pretend that we are in Great Britain, and see if Disney Plus says series over there.
Ooh, I bet it does. That's an interesting idea.
Or just hope we have an international listener.
Well, I imagine it would have to, because everything that you would go on, it would have to be like the language set for like, the descriptions and everything like that.
You know what?
So it most likely would be, Now the thing is whether or not they said, to your point, English, and then they actually have 2 different versions, right? But most likely, to your point, Nathan, they probably based off your, where you're getting it, your VPN from, because that's how they're able to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to check to see if I could change the language on here. And I think I have to do that from within the episode itself, don't I?
I think you're right. Okay, well, we'll just jump right in. We can do the experiment in real time here. We're going to tackle all 9 episodes of Star Wars Visions Season 3. So listeners, strap in for a pretty rapid-fire episode. But we're still going to do the 5 questions just for the entirety of the season, not for each individual episode. Otherwise, this episode would probably end up being about 3 hours long itself. Let's just jump right in with the usual question. What was your favorite, in this case, episode of Star Wars Visions Season 3? And Derek, I'll let you go first while Nathan experiments with British settings over there.
Yeah, so I'll just I'll go into one or the 2 really that I like the most here in a minute. But I will say I really liked the first 7 of these episodes, but the last 2 I just didn't care for. I will say the animation was good, but the actual stories themselves, I just felt were very flat, and just wasn't, something that I really enjoyed. So, but for the first 7 episodes was good. And I don't want to include the 9th child from this, because I felt like, it'll be related to one of our later questions. It feels like it's overall building this whole, big world, especially since we're going to get its own series. That you could actually say, Nathan, series, and down the line next year. So I almost don't want to give it too much credit, but again, wonderful world building and all that stuff. My 2 favorite from this one was episode 6, The Lost Ones, and episode 7, The Smuggler. The Lost Ones I really felt was just really entertaining. I thought the animation was on par. It really kind of felt like where I was going with it, and the idea of the whole thing that this, between the light and the balance and the kind of just some of the cool fight scene that they have with the main character F, and with her former master and stuff like that. But I really enjoyed the Smuggler. I just thought the Smuggler was one of the shorter ones, but I felt like it was just really fun. Really kind of had that Studio Ghibli animation style, even though it wasn't put on by them. But I just really liked that. I liked the characters. I liked that where they were really focusing and how they were doing things, the interaction. And I just thought overall it was probably the most, I would say, again, quote unquote, fun for myself out of all the episodes. And that's, again, we've talked about this many times. That's what we really look for Star Wars, right? Like, don't get us wrong. We all loved Rogue One and especially the Andor series, that serious tone and all that stuff. But when you're looking at Star Wars, again, the idea is it's taking us back to that childhood memory and what we get out of it. And I felt that this one, out of all the episodes, did the best, introducing some, somewhat same characters, some of the same, like you could almost find this episode in the real Star Wars universe, and the way it was, linear with everything. Again, the animation was on par. I thought the music score was just nicely done. It wasn't overdrawn like some of the episodes where that felt like that was the major focus. And it just felt like characters that I could kind of relate and really hope for. And it left you off in a good spot afterwards. Like, okay, this is one where, just like we felt with the Ninth Jedi, that this one I could see getting its own mini series, and I hope it does. Just because I felt overall it was just enough on the palate, left me a good taste, wanting more.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things I liked best about the Lost Ones was the whole idea about the carbonite being like a naturally existing gaseous compound, and then how, excuse me, how it's like freezing the planet slowly but surely. Like it's like an ecological disaster now that the Empire was there and they messed up the mine because they were being careless and all. That was pretty cool. And I enjoyed the way that F used the carbonite in her duel with her former master, whose name was Zero, which means our duel was F-Zero. Thanks, Nintendo. Yes. So that was kind of cool. Yeah, I really enjoyed that one and that whole world building aspect of it all. I also liked all the ancillary, the secondary characters. Juna was the same race as Dexter Jetster from episode 2, Attack of the Clones. I was like, oh, that's cool. And then she was, helping fix everything, like engineer, droid smith kind of deal. Nathan, do you want to go next for a favorite one, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. And I will say, I tried to find a British English on the Disney Plus app, and it's not there. So it must just be, if you're actually geolocated there, I assume. Anyways, but my favorite one of these, or two of these, I'm going to give honorable mentions to, are the Bounty Hunters and Yuko's Treasure, for specific reasons. It's very tempting if you are an animation studio and you get the opportunity to do one of these to jump immediately to, we have a Jedi and our Jedi is cool because insert trait here.
Look at their neat lightsaber or their cybernetic eye or something.
Right. Or our Jedi survived Order 66. This has never been done before.
Right.
Except a lot. And both the Bounty Hunters and Yuko's Treasure avoided doing that. So I really appreciated those. I liked the Bounty Hunters more. Yuko's Treasure was kind of obviously it was aimed more towards a younger audience with the giant teddy bear droid. But I thought that was neat, even though I wasn't necessarily the best target audience for that. The Bounty Hunters appealed to me more, but it was neat to see the droid that changed personalities. I loved that character. And then to find out, it's not actually that she doesn't want to get the droid fixed. Like it's something that she can't just do, even though the droid's like, why haven't you fixed me yet? So that one was probably my favorite of the lot, in large part because there were no Jedi. I did enjoy Black, the last one, but like as a piece of art, not as entertainment, so to speak.
Right. There wasn't really a storyline. That was the hard part about it. I mean, there was, but just a very basic of storyline.
It's one. Yeah, it's one where I'm glad that I read the description before I watched it. On the cusp of defeat, a psychedelic battle plays out in the haunted psyche of an Imperial trooper. So the storyline is that this Imperial trooper is on the second Death Star as the Battle of Endor is going down. And had I not read that, I don't know that I would have figured that out.
Like, what is happening? Who, what? Yeah. With regard to the bounty hunters, that was going to be my choice of favorite, but I'll pick something different now just so we can talk about another one because I'll just pick my number 2. But the bounty hunters was great to me because I loved the commentary about the industrialist corporate dude, Jin Sim, and how he's got this company and he's all like, look how great I am for helping out these war orphans, when really he was exploiting them. Like, oh, look, the corporate capitalist guy is actually exploiting everybody to make his millions. What a shock. And
look at how I'm helping these orphans I created. What was that last part?
Exactly.
Nothing.
Yeah. And then I loved how the bounty hunter girl turned on him, and then when her droid, the assassin / medical droid, was all like, you betrayed him just like you did with the other group that you used to work for. And she's like, that's not true. I love him pointing that out to her rather sarcastically. So we were talking earlier about how there's not a lot of Andor connections, but that droid definitely reminded me of K2SO. It was very much the classic Star Wars snarky droid. So yeah, my number 1 though, therefore, will be the Duel Payback, because I enjoyed that we had 2 episodes this season that were de facto sequels to episodes from way back in season 1, which has been, has that been 5 years now? Maybe it's been 4 years. It's somewhere around that mark.
I thought we said it was 4 years.
Yeah, I think it was
2021.
But did we say that a whole year ago?
No, we were talking about that. We were talking about the preamp earlier. A few episodes back, not that long ago.
Yeah. So I enjoyed the Duel Payback because it was cool to see more fighting from the Ronin. That was really neat. I liked the girl with the other quote unquote Sith girl with the using the kyber crystals in her hair. That was pretty cool. And of course, anytime I get to see Ewoks kicking some butt against more heavily armed and armored foes, I like that. But it made me kind of try to figure out, are they on Endor, or how Ewoks have become like Jawas and you have quote unquote off-world Ewoks now? I also really enjoyed the AT-AT cantina thing with the Anzellan guy in charge of the whole setup, and how that ended up being a very important part of the final battle because the AT-ATs begin moving, not on their own per se, but like they activate, which is a pretty cool special effect and scenario for the Jedi or the Force wielders to be doing their lightsaber duels upon.
I thought it was cool. I thought it was cool with that though when they were upside down and they turned them back on, so that the feet
and
were moving. It
made it feel like
platforms.
Exactly, Nathan. All I could think was, if we do a Super Smash Brothers of Star Wars, this is going to be a board where you jump from foot to foot and so on. Yeah.
So something a bit more platformery than the Masters of Terrascasi, which is a more traditional fighting game.
Yes,
I'll ask. Oh, go ahead, Nathan. If you
so I figured the presence of AT-ATs or AT-ATs places this sometime post Empire Strikes Back, or at least post Empire, or concurrent with the Empire, perhaps. But that makes me think that these might be off-world Ewoks, that Ewoks may have left Endor after the Empire fell, and that these AT-ATs are left over from the Empire, which would explain why they're not.
I was trying to figure it out though, because it wasn't quite as jungle or forest as I thought it was, like, mono biome, if you will, that I would expect Endor to be. But it could be that in the future, Endor has begun to become more temperate.
That is also possible, yeah.
Do we know how Ewoks breed or multiply?
Oh yeah, there's male female pairs, and they have
sure
kids.
For that. Okay, I was
Yeah,
going to
they
say,
have
because they
walklings.
grow. I mean, they never, I wasn't sure. I mean, we see baby Ewoks, we know that.
Mhm.
But I was just
Walklings,
curious if they're like tribbles, right? Where you could just take them off anywhere, right?
No, so two reasons in universe that we know that they're males and females is because we saw the walklings and we saw,
Well, I know there's
Ewoks,
males
right?
and females. Doesn't mean that they
Right.
still can't just,
So
be
that's
like
true. But
tribbles.
also in the old Ewok cartoon, there's an episode where two Ewoks are getting married. You know,
Okay.
which I suppose still doesn't prove that they're going to procreate, but that's heavily implied.
I was just curious, right? Or maybe they're like gremlins. You just get them wet and
Well, and they knew that Princess Leia would like a dress that they happen to have on hand. These little cannibalistic creatures had
to
a
fit her size too,
Princess
perfectly.
Leia size
Yeah.
dress. Don't think about that one too long.
I always told myself that the Ewok women were pretty good seamstresses, and so they had the stuff, and they were like, "We're going to make you a dress."
Just
Not
don't
that they
mind
had
the blood
eaten
stains
someone
on
who's that size.
the used one there. So,
Anyway,
I was going to ask my question though, real quick though. Was it just me, or was there parts in the trailer for that you see the Ronin that weren't in the actual episode? I feel like there was some fight scene clips in the trailer that I didn't see come to fruition, because I feel like in the trailer she jumps with like her leg like attacking the Ronin, but we don't actually see that. Like she does that at the end where he finds out, right, when she's kind of just using that leg piece with the one at the end. And I feel like in the trailer that was part of the move where it's like, oh, she's got a lightsaber leg when she was fighting the Ronin, but then she doesn't use that against him, if I recall, right? She only uses it at the end to kill the
I'd have to go back and double check, but my gut feeling there is probably that it was edited in such a way in the trailer that we assumed she was fighting the Ronin. Because if it cuts to the Ronin right afterwards, you assume that she's fighting the Ronin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd
just be really interesting that they actually would put out a fake trailer, right, to show that kind of stuff.
I don't know about fake. These days we see stuff in movie trailers that.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. But it's like a 25-minute episode is all I'm saying. Like that's a big chunk of time and stuff. That's all. I was just curious if I was like, am I nuts or but I'm nuts. We know that.
But I mean, it could also be that that was an animatic that they ended up not using.
Fair, yeah, that's what I figured at that point. But I just want to make sure. I was like, did I miss something? I just
for these episodes of Visions, all across all three seasons, I've often wondered if Disney puts out a call for, hey, who would like to do one of you animation studios? Send us like a 3-minute sizzle reel of your idea, and maybe that's where the part that you saw in the trailer came from.
Yeah, I mean they put trailers together all the time before finished product.
Yeah, and they're like, by the time we finished animating, we didn't actually use
that was in April, I think, when they released that trailer.
Right.
So that was almost 6 months. So I mean
that's
very well too. So okay.
Nope. I just went back to the trailer and I'm playing it in my other screen here. And now that we know about the Jedi guy, it's definitely him that she's swinging the lightsaber leg.
Okay, it wasn't the Ronin then. It was just
not the Ronin.
We just assumed because we didn't know. Okay, thank you.
And so, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but wasn't the Jedi in this one a droid? Right?
No,
you're wrong. You're wrong. He's more machine now than man.
Oh, he was cyborg.
Yes,
okay, all right.
Yes, he was a human, and the Ronin, when he killed him, took off the front of his face.
Okay.
And basically his jaw.
You'd be forgiven for thinking he was a droid, but
yeah. He definitely had some robot parts, as it were.
Yes.
Oh, he was definitely.
Okay. So he was almost like a corollary to Darth Vader.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Because he's light side. Well, ostensibly light side. It's the Ronin is so close to like the
Gray
Jedi that we
literally he's gray too.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Look, the whole thing's gray.
Sepia tone Jedi.
Good times. Anyway, okay, so let's move on to question number 2, and that is, which of these did you like the least, Derek?
So as I went, as I mentioned, I liked the first 7. The last 2 I did not care for. It's pick your poison. Like the animation in the Birds of Paradise, episode 8 was fantastic. Beautiful artwork. Mm-hmm. but the story was just boring. And I just, the character wasn't relatable. I'm just like, okay, here's another, like, how does she get to the level of what she was at as a Padawan and still be like that bad and undisciplined, right? And just her attitude towards everything. And again, you know, that kind of the felt, you know, obviously it's her journey, but again, it just was so slow. And I just was off put by the character from the beginning. That I was like, okay, whatever. And then Black, to your point, Nathan, like, to me, it was almost like the concept was cool. I just didn't like the story it was trying to tell. I get where it was going. It was like, you know, the mind of someone, especially a stormtrooper, right, trying to battle, you know, themselves essentially when they're faced with death, right, and all the things that, even though in theory when an explosion happens that quick, right, you instantly die. What goes through your brain, right? Do you like live a whole nother life in that split second, right? And that concept. And I just, overall, just the pinging back and forth, it was just too out of sync, right? And I get that that's what it's supposed to symbolize, or at least, you know, the concept of the story was. But I really like, the one part I did like was actually when they were doing the X-Wings and they were running the trench. Like, that was my favorite part. I was like, had they, in my brain, had they made it linear where it told the story of the Battle of Endor and just did that whole animation, it was just going from one battle scene to the next, and was going from like the Death Star and the Battle of Endor and kind of doing that whole flow. Because obviously it was playing some really good music. And I was like, okay, this is exactly like the type of like music, especially was that jazz flair that was like Cowboy Bebop all the way, 100%. But I was like, but just the story and the, like, to you know, Nathan's point, you know, psychedelic, and where it was going at, it was just, I don't, like I said, it just didn't hit a home run for me on that, where it just, again, I kind of was like, I just, again, nothing to tie me to it because I can't relate to it. You know, and that was it. So like I said, kind of pick your poison between the two. Again, certain points, beautiful artwork, great music, stuff like that, but just the stories both fell flat for me. And it was like, I'll probably never really rewatch these again ever.
Yeah, when it comes to Black in particular, I definitely felt like I was watching a segment from the old Heavy Metal animated movie, or even looking at an animated comic strip from an issue of Heavy Metal magazine from back in the 70s or 80s. It felt like a psychedelic dream of a Vietnam veteran having flashbacks to Vietnam. Because it almost felt like that, because like you said, that trooper was seeing almost his entirety of his service record throughout the Empire. Because there were X-Wing fights, TIE fighter fights. He was on speeder bikes chasing himself at one point. He was on Hoth at one point, and so on and so forth. It certainly felt like that one segment of the Heavy Metal movie, the first Heavy Metal movie, where there's a World War II gunner on a bomber, and he's been fighting against Japanese Zeros, and his plane gets hit, and they're about to crash into an island. But as they're getting closer and closer, as they keep sinking lower and lower, he tries to go throughout the rest of the plane to check up on his other crew members, because they've been hit several times and things smoking and all. And he finds they're all dead. They've all been shot. But then they turn into zombies and start trying to kill him. And as the plane is starting to crash, he has to throw them out of the plane or fight them off or what have you. And he finally does it. The plane crashes, but he gets his parachute and, you know, gets onto the island. And he's like, oh, thank God I survived the whole zombie thing. I can't believe that happened. He walks through the jungle and spreads the trees, and there's like 100 other crashed aircraft. And he's like, how many planes have been shot down over this island? And all of their crews come out as zombies, and they tear him apart at the end, because he actually died earlier in the whole thing when the Zeros were attacking his bomber. That's exactly the same vibe I got from this, where this stormtrooper was fighting. Because like at first I thought it was going to be, oh gosh, this is the first Death Star thing that we've all heard about. But no, the second Death Star, rather, because now the stormtroopers are all fighting each other for the last available spacecraft to escape from the hangar. But that isn't actually what ended up happening. Or if it was, this dude lost the fight to get onto the last shuttle or whatever. Anyway, it definitely felt like I was watching that scene on Heavy Metal where this soldier is dead, but he doesn't realize it yet, and he's having these flashbacks, right down to the animation style, like the creep show Tales of the Dark Side style, zombie-esque. My face is all ripped up, eyeballs everywhere, blah blah blah. Anyway, Nathan.
Yeah, no, this one reminds me of a particular soft drink from the world of Coca-Cola called Beverly, because they will tell you at the start, you have to try our most talked about flavor, Beverly. They don't say our best flavor. They don't say a flavor that you will like. They say our most talked about flavor. Black may be the most talked about episode from this season of Visions. That doesn't make it the one I want to go back and watch.
Right. Okay, all right. Nathan, do you have a different answer, or do you want to pick one that was also on your bottom 3 list?
Yeah, I would say the Song of Four Wings, even though it has what I liked about the Bounty Hunters and Yuko's Treasure not being about Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
It was just kind of weird at the end when she got the armor and turned into her own personal X-Wing. And at some point I'm like, okay, a lot of these I can imagine being in the Star Wars universe, or at least a version of the Star Wars universe. And that one I'm like, okay, this is inspired by Star Wars. This is not something that fits into Star Wars. It's going off on. So it's similar to what I didn't like about the one with the twins from one of the earlier seasons.
I think that one's just called The Twins.
Yeah, where I'm like, okay, they're fighting on the whole of the ship,
and their limbs were extending a la One Piece and what have you.
Yeah, and I get that this is part of this style of animation, but that doesn't make it the style that I prefer. So
it's definitely an homage to the 80s type of deal of anime shows, where, like you said, where the kid's able to get into the power suit and be part of the ship, just like Astro Boy episode in Star Wars Season 1, right? Vision Season 1. It's the same thing. It's just an homage. So you're perfectly right, Nathan. Where you, like I said, out of all the episodes, that was probably the least one that would definitely be considered, close to Star Wars canon of any level, right?
Now, I will say with this season, I feel like this season was more middling than last season. With last season, I felt like there were some that I just really loved and some that I'm like, this is not good. This season, there's none of them that I'm like, this one I must watch several times. But there's also none that I'm like, well, other than Black, I'm like, I'm just not going to come back to this.
Yeah. I'm going back to the Song of the Four Winds. When she started, I could tell it was an 80s homage because you had the Robotech thing where your motorcycle turns into your battle suit, right? Or your droid in this case, both actually. And then she also had her mission on a micro cassette. So it was like watching her take Soundwave from Transformers and put Ravage in there to get her message from base, So
see, I was imagining this cassette tape will self-destruct in 8 seconds.
Yes.
Well, and it had its own version of Grogu too, the cute little guy that's the Force user.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that one's all about merchandising.
Merchandising. All right. Well, I'll pick as my least favorite. Then kind of echo what Derek had to say about his second least favorite, Bird of Paradise. Yes, the animation was great. I understood the story. I liked this idea that her real trial before she could become a full Jedi was to resist the dark side inside herself. Totally plausible, very much in keeping with Jedi philosophy, but the pacing was just so wrong for me as a Westerner. And I think that's it. I think it's because I was looking at it from a Western, first world kind of viewpoint here. Is that I just wanted it to be one long continuous thing. I didn't like breaking up each day into its own little segment with some particular Asian proverb at the bottom right. I don't mind the Asian proverbs. That's fine. But I mean, the thing wasn't long enough in total runtime to need breaks like that. I get that it was multiple days to show how long she suffered before she had her enlightenment. Perfectly fine. You could have done that within the animation itself. I didn't need 4 placard title cards breaking up the flow. And worse than that, I now have Disney Plus with ESPN, so I have like the kind that has advertisements in it. And one time I got a placard for day 2 with the proverb and 2 commercials. And I'm like, I feel like I've watched more commercial than total runtime of this episode during this episode. So that really messed with the whole presentation. Like if the animators had somehow been at my house watching it with me, they'd have been so mad at corporate for breaking in between a placard and the next scene. I'm like, guys, I don't know what day was this? You know, yeah, there was like a scene where she was walking, like the camera had pulled back to show like the entirety of the forest where she was functioning. And then we cut the commercial, and it was like a Jeep commercial of a Jeep driving through a forest. And for a second there, I was like, did a Jeep just drive into this scene? What the? Oh, wait, no, this is a commercial. Okay. All right. That was weird. Yeah.
Weirdly, that might have been the most realistic part.
Right.
Because that one was kind of trippy too.
Now, I do like that some of the episodes, especially the Lost Ones and hang on, I took notes. Which one is the other one of these? The Lost Ones and the Bounty Hunters, they kind of had this feeling of the starship scenes were very like computer animated, almost cyber sci-fi.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Versus the hand-drawn interior scenes and that sort of thing. Although the Lost Ones took it to the extreme because not only were the outer space scenes where the Star Destroyer was and the refugee ship was done more cyber style, the planet stuff where they were down on the carbonite frozen planet and even the like hologram chamber, that was wild, that Zero was in, had like watercolors as the background. So like the city was like very broad strokes of like blotchy, splotchy, different colored tones, like watercolor painting. But then the people, the protagonists walking around and talking were like hand drawn. And then the spaceships were like computer animation. And it was all blended together quite well, which I thought was kind of a cool touch on the Lost Ones. And then, like I said, Bounty Hunter did that a little bit as well, but not as much.
Yeah, in a weird way, it reminded me of Babylon 5.
Mm-hmm.
Because back in the 90s, they were just experimenting with computer generated ships, and you could really tell that the space scenes are computer generated, and then you switch to the interior, and it's people on a set. Swap that out for animation.
Right. Although, of course, when Babylon 5 went into production, it was only a year and some months after Jurassic Park 1. And I remember Straczynski, the guy who created Babylon 5, in a behind-the-scenes deal once said, if you can make dinosaurs with computer graphics, we can make spaceships with computer graphics. And they did. They did a pretty good job for the time.
You can really tell now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I would love to see Babylon 5 remastered or remade even with newer special effects. I think that would be cool. But anyway, but yes, so that's why Bird of Paradise was like my least favorite of these. All right, so let's move on to question 3. And this will just be kind of a sprawling question. We may mention several episodes. What connections did you see to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy that you really liked, or at least, stood out to you in these episodes? Derek, any major connections? I mean, we got lots of X-Wings and TIE Fighters, and of course, every other Jedi has their own lightsaber, but...
Yeah, like I said, this goes back to the Smuggler, why it was probably my favorite, because like I said, it feels like it could legitimately be part of the real universe because we get to see Yavin 4, right? You get to see the base, right? And it's, again, part of that, world building where you have these, planets that are suffocating under the new empire and being persecuted and obviously getting taken over by the empire. I mean it's just the way it goes, especially the way the episode starts off, and then like I said, you get the idea that the characters at the end basically want to go liberate it, right? And and like I said, you get to go to the base on Yavin 4 and you get to see it. So I mean, like I said, and it's obviously it is taking place like I said, I don't think of on technically a world that's been dubbed before. I think this was the first time it created.
Right.
the place, but it wasn't. But I mean, it resembled Tatooine like no other, right? I mean, it felt like Mos Eisley, Mos Espa, all those places. And just like I said, overall, I mean, I felt like I said the episode was just really well done. Characters were well done, and the fact that like it felt like okay, this is a nice. Again, it's still built in the Empire time frame. We can't get away from it. But like I said, it was probably the one, like I said, that most resembled the closeness to the real Star Wars universe that we have right now. That's actual canon, right? Not again, the other ones haven't been, like you said, little things here or there, or really, have expanded, especially like the Ninth Jedi, because it could be way far in the future or way far in the past. We don't know, but either way, it's done a great job of building that portion of the universe.
Yeah. Nathan, did you have any connections that jumped out at you? There were a few Easter eggs from other sci-fi properties and movies and stuff too. If you want to say one of those.
Yeah, actually, there was a huge one. Darth Vader showed up in one of these.
That's right. That's right.
But not.
I am Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Planet Vulcan. Okay.
Yes, that Darth Vader showed up in the Lost Ones, which I thought was hilarious. But in the Duel Payback, when she pulls out the lightsaber that splits into like 20 different lightsabers,
the umbrella thing.
Yeah, the umbrella thing. That reminded me of General Grievous. But it's like we had to one up General Grievous. General Grievous pulls out 4 lightsabers and starts spinning them. It's like, oh my gosh, how could you ever survive this? And then Obi-Wan just like casually cuts off a couple of his hands and evens the thing up. And something similar happens here. She's got all these lightsabers whirling around. It's like, how could you survive that sort of onslaught? Oh yeah, he just cuts half of them in half.
Yeah,
and then she's back down to normal lightsaber fighting.
Like this Lego Darth Maul, right? So
yeah. Or Evil Ferb from Phineas and Ferb Star Wars.
Yes.
Swiss Army knife lightsaber.
Yeah. But at least it made sense though, because she's like, hey, I need to borrow all the lightsaber crystals, kyber crystals you're collecting, right? So.
But then also in Yuko's Treasure, that most definitely took place on Tatooine. In fact, we see Chalmun's Cantina with the Jawas sitting outside. And I couldn't tell if that was supposed to be Wuher behind the bar in the cantina.
I couldn't tell either.
It's close enough that I think you could squint and say, oh, yeah, this is the same guy that we saw in the original movie. But it's also different enough that if you were like, nope, that's just a different bartender.
It's his brother, Steve.
It could be, yeah.
Steve, yes. One of my favorite connections was in the Bounty Hunter when the assassin / medic droid Eva 4, I think that was her name, or its name, when they go to see the corporate master, Jin Sim, the first time, he gives the bounty hunter lady a nice drink, but then he gives the droid, he has his slave give the droid like the fanciest of oil. And all I could think about was in The Mandalorian season 3, when Mando goes to that droid run bar and they literally are like drinking fancy oils as they are like sitting around like slurping up, 10W40 or whatever. And so this Iva 4 was all like, ooh, the fanciest oil. You definitely know your way to a droid's heart or something along those lines. And I
thought it was like a Bender reference from Futurama.
That could be too, but I thought about Mando season 3 when he goes to that bar that has nothing but droids.
Yeah. That was the Christopher Lloyd episode, right?
This was.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, exactly. So, which is another Back to the Future connection. It's all coming together. It's like poetry. It rhymes. No, wait. It's like a bad studio prog rock album where it's supposed to have a theme, but then it doesn't. So anyway, I wanted to mention a couple other actual Star Wars Easter eggs, if you will. First of all, we talked about the AT-ATs in the Duel Payback, but they were also seen in Song of the Four Winds and in a couple of other ones. So AT-ATs are kind of having a moment, and we know that AT-ATs are going to be in at least one big scene in Star Wars: The Mandalorian and Grogu, because we saw a part of the trailer where they're like walking basically up the mountain, and one of them starts to fall off because apparently elves and dwarves and wizards aren't the only ones that can't.
Only counts as one.
Look, when we say all terrain, we mean all terrain that is flat and wide open.
I mean, yeah, mostly all terrain. Yeah. Also, in the Song of the Four Winds, even though we felt it was a little cheesy, a little too 80s, there was an Outrider reference from Star Wars Shadows of the Empire, because the ship that she flies at the end is definitely the same YT whatever model the
2400
is. 2400. Thank you, Nathan.
Yeah, I thought we were going to get a Dash Rendar reference there.
Yeah, I was like, oh, is Dash going to be like her co-pilot? But no, she just had a ship that was the same type as the Outrider. But I believe they did call the ship something else. It had a different name. I can't remember. Maybe they didn't name that ship. Anyway, but it was cool. I was like, hey, the Outrider. That's pretty neat. Let's see. We haven't talked that much about the Ninth Jedi, A Child of Hope. But Tito, the droid that is in that episode with the Ninth Jedi child, is very much like a light side version of Tebow, the guy who hangs out. Sorry, Toto 360 that hangs out with Cad Bane. He absolutely reminded me of like a good guy version of Toto. Now, he didn't fly around; he still walked. But I mean, other than that, the way he, like his cadence, the way he talked, and that kind of thing. I really enjoyed that episode, by the way. I'm glad to know that we're getting a whole series of the Ninth Jedi.
It wasn't as good as the first one, but it was still definitely good.
I agree with that statement in its entirety.
Yeah. I'm looking to see. Oh, it was kind of cool to see Carbonite further explained in the Lost Ones, because I had always thought that Carbonite didn't naturally freeze you. I thought Lando had to really mess with the system to use it to freeze a person, whereas previously they had set up the system to just freeze the Tabana gas there on Cloud City. And I know canonically that those guys are still mining Tabana gas to sell to the Empire or whoever, but I didn't think that Carbonite would do that to you unless you put it into a specially designed rig to freeze something, whether it be gas, humans, whatever. But apparently, if it escapes from nature, it'll freeze the whole area.
Yeah, I thought the same thing, because I thought it was something like dry ice, which exists, but you kind of have to go make it, not just, I'm walking around, I accidentally crack open a rock and poof. Yeah. Oh gosh, I'm frozen in place.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's the difference. Like maybe that's the planet where it's like pure Arbanian or whatever, right? Where to that point where it created a natural disaster out of it. That's the first time that's ever been thought of, right?
That was pretty cool. That's like an ecological impact of it all.
The only thing that didn't make sense with that though was that I would have thought that it wouldn't have carbon froze just only flesh and biological things. I would have thought it would have carbonated the buildings and stuff, because that was the weird thing. I would have thought it'd been everything, because then when it attacks, when she uses it on Zero at the end, it does his clothing and everything, or obviously the human beings too. But then, it, like I said, it didn't do the buildings. To me, the whole thing would have been gray and frozen versus just the flowers and the people.
Yeah, it's a little maybe inconsistent.
But then again, in Empire Strikes Back, when they freeze Han, it only freezes that little segment, and it doesn't freeze the whole.
But it freezes. Chamber. It freezes the air though, because he's a square. It's not like it just freezes Han. It freezes the entire panel. However it captures him with the parameter force field thing or whatever they use to bind everything into it. It does the whole air around him.
Maybe that's what you have to do when you refine it, is make it powerful enough to freeze all the stuff.
Now, to be fair, the Han Solo thing doesn't really make sense either, because he goes down with his hands in the binders.
Yeah.
And then when he's frozen, his hands are up here. Not in binders.
No, we're just supposed to assume that Han is that good of an escape artist that between the time they lowered him and he got down to the bottom, he'd already picked his cuffs and he was getting ready to climb out, baby.
Had he been Luke, he could have jumped out of it, but he's not a Force user, so.
Right. He picked the locks, he started to climb, and that he's not in pain. Come on, he's too cool for that. He was climbing. That's what this is about, obviously. Good times. Anyways, okay, so question 4. Speaking of the Ninth Jedi and all the coolness with Tito, The Ninth Jedi is getting a full series focused on just that world, that setting, that episode, these episodes. Which other Visions episodes, either season 1, season 2, or season 3, would you like to see get the green light for a full-on series? Nathan, do you have another one besides the Ninth Jedi?
Clearly Black. We should get all of Star Wars in the... No, I'm joking, of course.
We're going to lean into the whole 1970s Vietnam vibe. And of course, our soundtrack is going to kick off with I see a red door and I want to paint it black, which is also about Vietnam, by the way. So
just do a whole thing of, like you said, heavy metal. I mean, there'd just be a whole randomized episode.
Star Wars mature. For sure.
So I'd be good with the Duel. It did get the sequel. I would be good with that, getting a full thing. And I may be stealing Derek's thunder here, but I do think the Smuggler is ripe for possibly like a mini series. I don't think it necessarily needs a whole big thing, but it's a character that very much fits into the existing canon of Star Wars, and so could be brought into the larger Star Wars universe. Outside of that, I wouldn't mind seeing the Bounty Hunters get a sequel, just to get more time with that droid.
yeah.
And that's one where they're going off to do other things. So it very much ends on and then they went off and had other adventures,
right?
And we could see some of those other adventures. Those are probably the only ones from this season that I would really want sequels or larger things for.
Okay, all right. Derek, other than the Ninth Jedi, what would you like to see expanded upon?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I talked about the Smuggler, definitely, like I said, would be great, and I agree with you, right, Nathan. It's the same thing kind of with the Ninth Jedi, like 4 episodes is what this mini series is going to be like. I think that'd be perfect, like just a movie, right, of how they go liberate the planet and all that stuff. I agree. I honestly, I mean, really, let's be honest, they've done 2 episodes, The Ronin, like that. I mean, it's got its own comic book, right? Like it should be its own series at this point, as well, besides the Ninth Jedi. But honestly, the one I really want them to make a movie of is I Am Your Mother, the Wallace and Gromit one.
Yeah,
that's the best one that you could get, where you could get, again, I love the Star Wars Legos. It's a lot of fun, but to me, that's the other thing you could do. You could make a parody movie of it with give me some British humor. I'm fine with that, right? And you give me that. And in a Star Wars, whimsical movie, a la Wallace and Gromit, right? So I think that would be the perfect one to give me an hour and a half, 2-hour movie to expand upon. I mean, again, it's in the same universe, right? I mean, we've got all these characters and it's referencing everything. So again, I think it would just be funny to have a parody movie, of Star Wars, taking place in the Star Wars universe.
Well, and that would be perfect for like a holiday type thing, stuff that they are now doing as Lego stuff.
Yeah,
they could do a Wallace and Gromit style thing on that.
Yeah, totally. For me, it's
Life Day event.
Yes. Speaking of Life Day events, the Ninth Jedi, A Child of Hope, the part where Tito is telling to her about the collapsed statue and how he hasn't been able to get past it ever since the last time the Raiders attacked, absolutely felt like a level or a scene out of Star Wars: The Old Republic MMO. Like, you show up and the mission is to get across this thing where this giant statue has collapsed in some battle that happened like 100 years ago or 20 years ago. I was like, oh my gosh, this feels like it should be a mission in SWTOR for me to go and find out what's happened to this old Jedi Master who's in this Bacta tank. Of course, in SWTOR, you would have pushed the button and he would have come out and been fine and be like, well, so what's been happening the past 1,000 years? But this was a slightly more realistic take that he had been dead for quite some time. Just goes to show, not even Bacta can keep you alive forever. Sorry, Boba Fett.
What happens if he was frozen in carbonite, though?
Well, but he wasn't.
Then he should be fine.
No, I'm just saying, but if he was frozen in carbonite, would he have been fine?
Assuming he survives the freezing process, that is.
It's the perfect hibernation.
And they monitor the monitor, yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, the one I would like to see get its own series. This is a little out of left field, but I thought it was so clever and it would be fun. A la Josie and the Pussycats old animated series, Tatooine Rhapsody. I want to see the story of the band as they go on the road, as it were, and they keep going to new planets each episode. And right before they go to do their show, of course, they get involved in some mischief and they have to help save the day, either against the Empire or the Hutts or something. It would totally be a classic 80s, let's put on a show, but first we got to solve the problems type of story. I mean, it's filled with tropes, of course, and musical numbers, just like Josie and the Pussycats or Jap and Jaws. Or Scooby-Doo. Every so often, Scooby-Doo. Yeah, totally. I would watch the heck out of that. And you could really play it as a nostalgia play. I think that'd be a fun thing to happen in the 50th anniversary year of the original Star Wars. So 2027, Tatooine Rhapsody, animated series.
On it now.
Lucasfilm, make it happen. All right, so let's just talk about our overall thoughts about season 3 of Star Wars Visions. I think I'll just go ahead and go first because I don't have a huge tirade about overall thoughts. More just, I'm kind of amazed that we got 3 seasons worth of this project. I really thought when they first announced it, back in season 1, all it was trying to do was to showcase the idea of what we could do with a series on a streaming service like Disney Plus, because Disney Plus was still so new. Visions was one of the things that Lucasfilm announced as part of overall corporate Disney to promote the idea of Disney Plus as a streaming service. It felt like it actually took a really long time for it to come to fruition compared to like Mandalorian season 1, which was like the flagship show that launched Disney Plus. But I know that they had talked about Visions really early on, and then it sort of finally actually came out. But then they were emphasizing that it was going to be Japanese animation. And I thought, well, surely this is going to be a one-off. When there was a season 2, I was kind of amazed. And season 3, I was even more amazed that it continues. I kind of hope they keep doing it every year for as long as the market will bear. I've been really pleasantly surprised by most of the stuff. And I'm not really an anime guy. I don't have anything against it, but like I'm not the kind of person that's watched a bunch of Cowboy Bebop, Attack on Titan, all that jazz. I know about them because Joseph watches some of it. He really loves My Hero Academia. And I've watched a few episodes of that with him. But like I only know about Attack on Titan and those kind of things because of the references in other properties and of course the seemingly ubiquitous commercials back when it was on Cartoon Network. But like even someone like me who is way more Star Wars fan than anime fan, I've enjoyed Visions and I'm really happy to see that they got a season 3. I hope we get a season 4. Derek, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've been a huge anime fan since the early 90s. Like I said, I mean, to be fair, like some of our cartoons that we grew up on are technically Japanese anime. I mean, they were done by Japanese studios. Thundercats, for example, people don't realize that it was made in a Japanese studio. And the artwork. And I've always been anyways. I mean, you referenced it. I mean, yeah, you could definitely tell where some things in today's modern era of animation where they are doing it more CGI and animation, it's not hand drawn. But I love the Studio Ghibli films and Miyazaki. I love when I grew up with Cowboy Bebop, Trigun, Dragon Ball Z. I mean, that was epic theater for me in my teens, right? So and just the fact that back then you didn't have the kind of adult anime shows that you do nowadays in Western culture. That was
right.
Where us nerds, we didn't have that. You had kids cartoons, and yeah, you might get a few adult references here and there, as they throw in things, occasionally. But for the most part it wasn't. And then obviously as anime took off, then you got a lot of Western shows here in the United States and through North America that's grown over the years, and now you have a lot of good stuff. But one of the things that I don't like about Disney and their movies today is it's all the CGI. It's all Pixar. And I miss that. I want, Princess and the Frog was really the last true animation film that we've gotten in a long time. And that's almost 20 years old at this point.
Yeah, or it's one of those weird live-action remakes of an animated movie, like Beauty and the Beast live-action, Little Mermaid live-action.
Well, we got live-action on top of that. Don't even get me started, because all of this is just rehashing old stuff. I want original content.
The live-action Lion King, which was 100% animated.
So, that's all CGI animated.
Super weird.
But anyways, yeah. So I'm with you. I think it's a breath of fresh air. Again, loving anime. Yeah, I thought season 1 was phenomenal. I mean, I think that was the most groundbreaking thing because you go back and you can really watch those episodes. You can almost watch the entire season. There's still a couple episodes that I just kind of like, they're not my favorite, but again, I feel like that one's strong. I think if you go back to season 2, I love the concept of season 2 though, was they got away from the Japanese and they let other countries go through it. And the beautiful thing about that is when we did the review, a couple of years ago on it, we all had different variations of what we enjoyed the most, what we thought was decent, and then the ones we didn't dislike. But again, I don't think any of them that I would say I hated, but again, some of them that I probably would never rewatch. But again, it was a great way of bringing different culture viewpoints of Star Wars than what it meant to those folks. And that's what, good storytelling works. And it doesn't mean that it always has to hit us as the Western American audience. I'm sure there was other audiences out there that really enjoyed it. And again, making Star Wars part of them. And then this season, going back to the Japanese roots, I thought was great. That we talked about just earlier, where you brought, the Ninth Jedi and the Ronin into play. And we know that we're going to get its own series. Like I said, Ronin's got its own comic book series, had a couple of comic books done with it, manga style. So phenomenal stuff. And I think they should continue to keep doing this because again, it brings, some, different viewpoints. It pushes content for Star Wars. Again, and the fact that they're short enough where if there's ones that don't get enough quote unquote, attention from the mass audience, then they don't have to invest much into it. Right. Like,
right.
It's almost like every one of these is its own pilot. And you get that opportunity to really play with it and you could test it, and some that do well. And again, some of these, may not get its own thing, but they can be critically acclaimed and may get, some nominations and some even possible wins down the line when they, look at next year's award ceremony and television and stuff like that. So again, I think it's great. I've definitely, really hope that a couple of these that we just talked about earlier definitely do. Some of the ones previously, again, I think a season 4, and maybe we go back and do some other countries that we get to do the first time, but some that were really well received, they come back and do, a couple of sequels on some things. There's some episodes that I really go back and, if I have the opportunity, and hopefully at some point when Sophia gets a little bit older and she might take a liking to different types of animations, cartoons and stuff like she does already, but the concepts and the stories are a little bit still above her. But when she gets to that age and she may like that, then I can rewatch them with her and see what, she exceeds from that. So, but anyways, that's my take on this. And again, I'm with you, Scott. I hope they continue it and, keep on changing it up a little bit. I like that.
Yeah. Nathan, your overall thoughts?
All right, so I think I misspoke earlier, and I said that season 2 was the one where I felt like it had higher highs and lower lows. That's actually season 1. Some of my favorite episodes are in season 1, but some of my least favorite episodes were also in season 1. Season 2 I felt was more even keel. There was nothing I particularly hated, but nothing I particularly loved. And this one reminded me more of season 2, where even with the Duel and the Ninth Jedi being sequels from season 1, I liked the season 1 versions of those better. So they were higher highs at that time than they were in this season. But again, other than Black, which I liked in its own way, it's just so much different than everything else. It stands out for that reason. There were none that I'm like, this is just bad. Whereas I know y'all said, yeah, let's do a Tatooine Rhapsody thing.
Well,
I did not like
that.
You said that. I didn't like Tatooine Rhapsody. That was one of my least favorite ones. And that's one that, if I go back and watch season 1, I skipped that one. But, that is a great thing about Star Wars in general and Visions in particular. It's a restaurant. You order what you want. There should be Star Wars that you don't like because someone else does. And I don't believe there's any episode of Visions that nobody likes.
Right.
And to me, that makes it a successful product. And I would love to see them continue this and have seasons 4, 5, 6, and just as long as they can keep coming up with stuff. And there are so many animation studios out there. They can do this forever. Effectively.
Yeah. Well, especially once they start letting people double dip like they did with the Duel Payback and the Ninth Jedi, Child of Hope. So that'll be great. Okay, well, let's do Derek's favorite part of the show, and then we'll wrap up this episode. And that is, of course, ostensibly titled, What Star Wars T-shirts Are We Wearing This Week? But I actually don't have a Star Wars T-shirt this week. I've got other Star Wars merch. I know.
Yay.
I know. Yeah. So I'm going to go first because I have it here. And I've actually had this for quite a little while, although not as long as I would have had it if I bought it at release. So I'm not saying it's that old, but it is a compilation volume of Star Wars, the Han Solo Adventures, which collects 3 old school Star Wars Han Solo paperback novels, one of which was produced before The Empire Strikes Back came out. So very similar to The Mind's Eye, which was like the first Star Wars novel that came out after A New Hope, but before The Empire Strikes Back, and it's since been extensively retconned, not only with Luke and Leia being brother and sister, but spoiler alert, Darth Vader is Luke's father. And so, that whole thing had to be changed. But this book, this volume, all of these written by Brian Daley, compiles Han Solo at Star's End, great title, Han Solo's Revenge, and then Han Solo and the Lost Legacy. Han Solo at Star's End is, of course, the most famous Han Solo novel, because it's what started the whole idea that Han was not just some smuggler or 2-bit con artist, but he was like this masterful piratey gangster dude, and it had really leaned into that old west, almost Indiana Jones-esque adventure flavor before Indiana Jones was a thing, which makes Harrison Ford being cast as Indiana Jones later even more just completely and totally perfect, which is kind of amazing. But yeah, great novels. This book, even the compilation book, is ancient at this point. Let me look and see if there's a copyright page here real quick. They were originally published, like I said, end of the 1970s into the 1980s. Han Solo at Star's End was 1979. Han Solo's Revenge was also 1979. And then Han Solo and the Lost Legacy was 1980. This version is June of 1992. So this book is pretty ancient in and of itself right nowadays. You can see how yellowed the pages are. And yes, my handy dandy bookmark is a Star Wars Topps Masterwork series of R2-D2 trading card, because I love using those old Star Wars Masterwork trading cards as bookmarks these days, because there's not a whole lot of value for that set, but it's great artwork. All right. Nathan, what do you got?
All right. Well, I've got 2 things. One, you might be able to see my glasses are my Chewbacca glasses. Yeah.
Good times.
But I'm also wearing an actual Star Wars T-shirt, and I'm going
hey,
vintage style. It's a new T-shirt, but it is a vintage style for the original movie here.
Wow. I love the prominence of the dewback.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. Yeah, that looks like a cover from a Star Wars Marvel comic, but it's not.
No. And this was produced in the year 2025, so it is as ancient as my most recent Her Universe order.
But it's inspired by Marvel comics.
Totally. Yes. Totally. Yeah, great choice. All right, Derek, what you got?
Well, I mean, I'm usually wearing my favorite Sunday Star Wars shirt, not today with the AT-AT. Ironically, more AT-AT, Scott.
Good times.
But I also wanted to bring out the What a Piece of Junk
yes.
coffee mug, so you can know to go to, get our sweet merch out there on the store. So,
yeah, cool. Excellent choices all around, everyone. And as Derek just alluded to, you can find the coffee mugs, mouse pads, iPod cases, iPad cases, mouse pads, almost anything you can think of over at tpublic.com. Just hit up tpublic.com and in the search bar, look up Fandom Podcast Network to find our merch, along with merch from all the other great shows here on the Fandom Podcast Network. All right. I'm not exactly sure when we're going to do our next episode, but it will probably be sometime in the month of December, although it might not be because we're all family men these days. We got a lot of family stuff happening around the holidays. But I think we'll get at least one more in before the end of this year. And then, of course, next year we'll have a lot of stuff happening up to and including Star Wars, The Mandalorian, and Grogu. So I look forward to finally having a new Star Wars movie in the month of May to celebrate my birthday. All is right in the universe. Thank you.
Hopefully we'll do Scott Conn and we can make it work.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes, that would be so cool. But anyways, if you guys have some stuff you want us to cover or things you want us to change or do differently on the show, please hit us up on the social media in between episodes and we'll be glad to respond to the stuff that you want us to do differently. But until then, please always remember to respect each other and then definitely respect each other's fandom. All right, Nathan, punch it.